Inspired to learn Kansas stories. Learning Forward Kansas is excited to share this video series with Kansas educators. These videos celebrate Kansas educators as well as highlighting our Kansas colleagues who are leading professional learning and redesign. Across Kansas, educators and students are inspired to learn. We see this in every part of our state, from Atchison to Ashland, Oakley to Oxford, Belleville to Burlington, and from Dodge City to Junction City. The size of the district or school makes no difference. Educators are inspired for students to become successful adults. We explored why professional learning matters in our first video and examined what effective professional learning looks like in our second video. There are 3 how videos. This video, How Learning and Leading Together, focuses on learning communities that inspire. The second how video focuses on learning designs that promote growth through collaboration, teachers learning from each other. And the third and final how video focuses on the importance of leadership in creating a culture of learning, success for all. Even as we target 3 of Learning Forward standards or conditions, it is important to remember that it takes all 7 of the PL standards or conditions to create effective professional learning. We know professional learning is the engine of change, as all Kansas educators seek to redesign schools for the success of each student. Each of these how videos features strategies, protocols, and learning designs that are now being used in Kansas schools by Kansas educators as they redesign our schools and lead professional learning that changes educator practice and always leads to student success. This how video focuses on learning communities. Learning communities that inspire and create a culture of success for all. We will define and describe learning communities, plus explore why learning communities are important, what it takes to create learning communities, and what they look like. As we always say, our motto is, at our school, it is everyone's job to learn. Learning communities include teams of educators working together to change practice that improves student success. What does it take? It requires continuous improvement, it promotes collective responsibility, and it supports alignment of the individual, the team, the school, and the district goals.
It's a group of people who come together with a common purpose. And in education, our common purpose, of course, is student learning and meeting the needs of our students and growing successful students. So as a learning community, we need to come together as a staff. And I think that it gives everybody a collective responsibility for every kid in the building. And it also builds leadership among all of the teachers because in those learning communities, we have to come together and be, what's the word I'm looking for, vulnerable in order to share what our kids are doing, be able to talk and have honest conversations with each other about student data and what's going on in our classrooms, how we teach, and we have to be very vulnerable and honest with each other in those situations. So a learning community is data-driven. You are looking at data, making decisions based on that data of what your kids need, being flexible and changing midway. If this isn't working, then we need to try this. And again, having those conversations. And when I say it's a collective responsibility, it means all hands on deck. We are all working together for the same purpose. It's a community because it's building wide. We have the same purpose, but then there's your smaller professional learning communities, which might be your grade level groups working for for that group of kids that they're working with. And that's why it builds leaders within the building too, is because all the teachers are leading that process. And I think that's the two important things, the collective responsibility and building that leadership within the building.
When we think about our learning community, we want first and foremost a group of adults to come together to collaborate, with the focus being about students and student learning. And then that drive, we use data then to drive that conversation. And I think that's kind of our working definition of professional learning communities.
Many Kansas educators first experienced learning communities in the late 90s as Rick DeFore introduced professional learning communities that work. He challenged educators to break down silos of isolation through collaboration and focusing on learning, continuous improvement, and doing the work. Rick used this definition for learning communities, always focusing on a never-ending process, collaboration, results, and learning. Since the 90s, learning communities have had many titles, regardless of what they are called in your school. Learning communities are learning together over time, having a common purpose. They are member-driven, and they are about doing what is best for kids. Learning communities are not grading papers and scheduling activities. They are not traditional faculty meetings. They are not a one and done. This work may look different within districts because it always focuses on the learning and what is best for students. The research shows over and over that when teachers work together and learn from each other, this collaboration results in increased student achievement.
It's the hardest job you will ever love because there's so much to it and you're constantly learning, you're constantly changing, constantly honing your skills in order for the kids to be able to develop their own skills. And it's been an eye-opener. One of the best parts of what we've been doing with our STEAM activities is that constant collaboration with our other teachers. It's vital. Without it, we don't have that focus in order to get our project-based learning through. Collaboration is just, it's vital, but it just opens your eyes to all the different activities and things that you can actually pull into a project or into your STEAM activities in order to make them work. We are no longer just teacher in a classroom. We are a floor teachers. The kids see us talking in the hallways about the different activities that we're doing, and we're getting collaboration back from our co-teachers. The kids see it on a daily basis that we do talk, we do interact. If we have a question, we go to somebody else. They're learning that same technique, that question answer, how do you make it work? It has brought us together, and we have better conversations now. We have more conversations that have a jumping off point and then they go in different directions. And again, it's that exchange of ideas that is sometimes you just don't get.
Shirley Hord simplifies the definition, saying professionals coming together in a group, in a community, to learn.
Our professional learning communities meet twice a month. We look at that as building wide. We have our core teachers and as well as our encore or specialist teachers and joining us in those conversations because we believe it takes a team to move all of our students forward. We meet for an hour after school on Wednesday afternoons, and that's our time to reflect together, grow together. We ask that's 1 hour that they put aside to learn, reflect, and bring things that they can implement into their classrooms.
As we delve into learning communities, we are inspired by DeFore's message that failure is not an option for students. We do whatever it takes. We also understand that failure is a part of the learning process in order for us to grow and improve our practice. We never give up at getting better.
The idea that we can use our professional learning and tie that all together too. We're going to try something, we're going to fail forward, we're going to get better. It's the exact same model to me that I want to use in my classroom with my kids. If that's the best model for learning, then why not do that in professional learning?
We also believe that if we try something and it's not successful, that we reflect on that and learn how we can improve that. But with any kind of professional learning, it's important for us to know that it takes time. It doesn't just get fixed overnight. So it might take a year to really put something into place and feel comfortable, and then the next year we can take off and run with that success in the classroom.
What kind of school or district do you want? Roland Barth challenges us to reflect on our own schools when he says, ultimately, there are two kinds of schools, learning enriched schools and learning impoverished schools. I have yet to see a school where the learning curves of the adults are steep upward and those of the students are not. Teachers and students go hand in hand as learners, or they don't go at all. Learning communities create a framework for change and redesign. It allows us to focus on the why and the what. Our challenge is how it works in our districts, buildings, and teams. Learning communities drive the work of districts as they clarify their vision, their mission, their purpose in their redesign efforts. The focus is on student success through shared efficacy, common commitments, targeted learning, and relevant goals. Learning Forward Kansas shares John Hattie's belief that we are all seeking what works, but our challenge is to use what works best. Looking at the graphic helps us understand learning communities. We find the why central to this model and to the successful implementation of learning communities. Why do we do this? What is our purpose? Student success and educator effectiveness. Tony Wagner states, both students and teachers learn more and do more when they feel a part of something important that is larger than themselves and that they helped create. As all districts in Kansas seek to redesign the learning experiences of students, educator learning also shifts in focus, content, and design to improve our practices. Again, that leads to our students' success. Redesign means trying new things, getting outside of our comfort zones, and requires the support and encouragement of our colleagues and our leaders. All efforts are focused on what's best for kids, which may lead to changes in what we've done or how we have done it, including a much, much greater emphasis on collaboration.
I came to Inman 7 years ago, and that was just a culture. Inman had a culture of collaboration where it was just you walked in and you worked with your teaching partner and you worked with other people around the building. And when Carrie and I became teaching partners, we have a collaboration time set aside every morning that we're able to get together and talk about what's going on in our classroom, where we're at. Even we get together after school and during the summer, and it's just always been, that's what we do.
Well, it wasn't always a collaborative culture here. I think when I came, we all worked in our rooms and it was separated. And as time went on, PLCs became very popular, and we realized that we all wanted what was best for kids, and we were all had the same vision, but we needed to come together and realize that it's okay if we're not doing things the right way. We think they're the right things, but they might not be. And so we had to give up some of those things that we love to do that were just fun. And sometimes that was hard to hear, and we didn't want to give those things up, but we did. And collaborating with each other built the trust that we needed. The PLCs did a lot of that. I would say when Bentley came 7 years ago, we were probably just building those PLC times where it was set, where we knew we did it daily. And Bentley was a great asset to our team because he had seen it in lots of different places and brought more to our culture here at Inman Elementary, and that was amazing, and I am so thankful for that.
Even on like a regular basis, if we have a question, we don't hesitate to go ask the grade above, the grade below,
Right.
or whoever else we see as an expert in what we're working through. So,
And I think once you get in those PLCs, it builds that eagerness to learn, and you see that spark in another teacher, and you want that spark too. And so it really does build community, but it also builds the drive for something new within yourself.
and we're not I mean, I don't feel like we're competitive
I don't think
around here
so.
either. It's more of an open sharing environment. So
As we just heard, creating a culture of learning supports the changes that come with redesign efforts to improve student success by doing 3 things: focusing on learning rather than teaching, working collaboratively, and team members holding themselves accountable for the kind of results that fuel continued improvement.
Teaching is not an easy job. One simply cannot become an independent subcontractor and close their door. We have to support one another. We have to learn from one another. There is so much knowledge that staff members possess, and we can learn from each other and make really great things happen.
The one thing I would add is it's messy and it's never clean, and the agenda sometimes doesn't get followed like it should because the conversations are messy, teacher leadership is messy, professional learning communities is messy. But in the end, there's always a good result that comes out of it, and it's always student-centered.
The educators we just heard underscored the work of Shirley Hord and Jem Rusin, who identify characteristics that are found in effective learning communities. These include supportive and shared leadership, shared values and vision, intentional collective learning, supportive conditions, and shared personal practice. Sometimes this is called deprivatized practice, learning from each other. Now we want to think about what it takes to become an effective learning community. What beliefs, what mindsets do we need? What actions allow us to achieve our purpose, essentially going from knowing to doing? The ultimate question becomes, what works best? What does it take? Let's listen to a variety of Kansas educators share what they think it takes.
We started with just a small core group of teachers that felt like they could do this in their classroom and wanted to think differently. We visited schools. We visited a couple of different schools. We looked at design loops. We looked at the processes that they went through. We had student focus groups come in and tell us how they wanted to learn, which was really interesting.
When you talk about professional development, professional learning, accessible, worthwhile, relevant to what you teach, and immediate. It's not a day-long conference. It's every single day I'm learning from people. I'm in every one of these classrooms. Even if I don't step in their classroom live ever, I'm in their classrooms multiple times a week because they're posting what they're doing in their classes. They're posting their victories. They're posting, the activities they're doing. They're posting student work. It's just an ongoing, immediate, continuous learning process, which is what we want our kids to go through. So why wouldn't we engage in that too?
What makes the PLC process a little bit unique about Jardine Elementary School is there are people on our PLC team who are fully trained in what the PLC cycle is supposed to truly look like. So we have a lot of honesty and a lot of feedback that's very genuine, and there's a level of trust and commitment to bettering things for students that I see in our meetings.
So often it's almost looked at it as a weakness that I've got to get better. I've got to improve. Oh, so you haven't been doing your best this whole time? No, I've been doing my best, but my best can get better. And that's kind of the philosophy we all have, that I know I'm trying to do a really, really good job, but I know I can always do a little bit better. And you've got to drive yourself to have that growth spurt, no matter where you are in your career.
So much what we do is directly related to culture and perception. You've got to develop the right culture in your school and in your business or whatever you have going with you. If you're the teacher, you're at the classroom, and that culture drives your ability to do everything. And it's all that culture and that perception that we're not going to be afraid to fail. We're not going to be afraid to put our necks out there and try something new. And we're all going to work together as a team. When something fails, we're going to be there to help each other get back up and continue to grow and not give up. That mentality of grit and just driving forward and doing what's best is what we're all about.
We have a culture of learning in our building. We're all lifelong learners, and we have to have a culture that's important for our kids. I say in order to make it work, you first have to have, like I said, the buy-in and the belief that this really works and that it's important. And it's worth our time. It's not a waste of time. And then you have to have it built into the schedule. It has to have a time in order to make it function. Money-wise, both of those things don't really take a lot of money. It just takes a lot of communication and a lot of work in building up the importance of why we need to have learning communities.
I think all of those things have to be in place. You have to provide time, you have to provide support, you have to provide education, you have to provide the structure. And I think it also helps to have some accountability to your professional learning teams. And that may mean making sure you have an assigned leader that is compensated for their leadership. It may mean that you have a product that is given. It may mean that you have an outcome saying you want to discuss these things. The data that's provided for them, you've got to provide those resources that are needed. But it does take all of those things, and if even one piece is missing, you can see that it can derail very quickly. I think that administrator involvement is important, but I think it's important that you give the teacher leaders enough training and freedom that they can excel within that structure.
Also, if you were to just go down the hallways in the morning before the kids get here, it's amazing how many teachers are talking with one another and trying to coordinate activities. Time is something I wish I could give more of my staff, and that is one of the challenges that I have. I've got about 25, 30 staff members with over 400 kids, and time is precious, time is a gift, and that is something that I continually look at to see what I can do to help those teachers.
Many communities provide teachers and all educators opportunities to improve instructional practices through increased ownership of the learning, teamwork, and a feeling of being valued in a school environment.
I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to know all the answers, and yet I can still try and I can keep trying. And when something fails, I can look back at it and say, okay, why did this fail? How can I make it better? And that's been big for me.
In order to thrive, a learning community requires time, space, resources, technology, and an opportunity for feedback. Effective collaboration is a learned skill that requires a set of conditions for both the individual and the group. When educators engage in rich conversations, it changes the culture to one of collective efficacy. Intentionally integrating the expertise and experiences of all members creates a sense of team and adds value to all. The mindset of the participants, how we show up, is critical to the success of a learning community. We want to be open to collaboration, growth, and learning. When a school community respects each other and acknowledges individual skills and participation, all staff move forward in a positive environment while also becoming learners. Again, collective efficacy.
I have not had to mandate that you must spend at least one day a week in collaboration. They do that on their own because they understand the significance and the importance of it, and it helps all of them become better teachers.
Watch and listen as more Kansas educators share their experiences of what it takes to flourish as a learning community.
It's just an hour every Friday morning, and we try to at least pull a couple of those days a month that are focused towards STEAM and project-based learning. We've had great administrative support, great board support. It's been really important that we find the time for teachers, and that was one of the things that we talked about that we missed this year, was that extra professional development time, and I think that we'll have that next year. We've had some conversations about how important that is, and we started to see our teams just kind of start to fracture. That cohesiveness wasn't there, and because they need the time to have conversations, and they don't have a common plan time in our school. We have one teacher for every grade level, so we need to be able to get together and work.
Leadership has just, they're the driving force, because it would not have begun without having that leadership quality there in the first place. They were the ones that came up with the original program for us. They were the ones that said, what if? And then now they get unhappy with us because we say what if. But that was the big one of it, was that they're the ones that opened the doors. We had to think outside that box, and it was allowed to happen. So we ended up going to a couple of different districts, checking out what they had, and then the question was, what do we want our program to look like? Because we knew we were going to have to change. This was something that we could change with. It was going to fit with what our district goals were. It was going to fit with what our teacher-student goals were. It was all going to fit in together. We can make this happen.
We always have a litmus test of what's good for kids. That's what we always bring our discussions back to when we make decisions. It's not only how does it affect us as educators, but ultimately what's this going to do for kids, and that's.
And sometimes we have to set aside our, how do I want to say it, our egos at the door, because sometimes it's hard to hear that we might not be doing something right, but once you listen and try something different, you realize, it works so much better. And it's okay, but we have to trust each other to allow us to fail and change and move on. And I think that we do a pretty good job of that here. Yeah. We don't always agree with what we're all saying, but we are willing to try and move on, make change.
And we've had disagreements over the years too, and
yes.
But we've always know that it's not personal. It's the direction we're trying to move. So.
I believe as a part of our professional learning communities, it is important to have a culture of trust within the building. And being fairly new to this building, I believe that's the ground level, working with teachers, listening to teachers, and then taking and finding things that would help support them. Once they feel like we have that level of trust, the learning comes together. We are a team in decision making, we are a team in our learning, and we do that as a building. And from there, they're willing to try things, they're willing to work together, reflect together, and move forward.
I think it's all about establishing trust and respect with staff members, creating a school of connectedness and caring, and making it truly a family. That is what it takes. We'll always do more when they feel respected and valued.
While knowing what it takes is an important step toward the effective development or use of learning communities, the real success comes when we turn the knowing into doing. So now we ask, what does a learning community look like? Roland Barthes has determined that the actions of educators, the doers, in learning communities include 1. Talking to one another about our practices. 2. Sharing our craft knowledge. 3. Observing one another while we are engaged in our practice. And 4. Rooting for one another's success. Let's look and listen as we hear from educators as they share their experiences of what learning communities look like.
Probably the best thing that's happened with our team is that a lot of our collaboration, it's not an event, it's more of a lifestyle. A lot of it is what we call hallway collaboration, conversations that take place between classes, during planning periods, walking into each other's rooms, whenever we have a chance. But I think having those daily conversations where we know we can turn to each other and that we just have an openness and a vulnerability, I guess, where we don't hesitate to ask questions of each other. Even if we don't teach the same classes, we have a tendency to ask each other about what do you think this will work, or bounce ideas off of each other. So just that willingness to throw things back and forth and willingness to fail once in a while. I think that's kind of a big deal, because then you can turn to the people who you threw it out there and say, hey, well, that really didn't work, but here's what I might have done differently. So I think just the communication aspect of it and the openness and willingness to talk to each other, I think, is one of the biggest keys.
It costs us anything to share a tweet or, to send a Vox. And sometimes our best conversations happen at 9:45 at night after we know all of our kids are in bed, and then somebody sends a question, and before you know it, it's 10:30, and we've been talking back and forth about an idea for 45 minutes.
Voxer is big. I think it allows that the personal conversation to take place on a technology time, to where you can listen to the conversation later. It's still much more personal, and you have that back and forth a lot more. Twitter is a research tool. We're sharing, rather than, I need to print this off and I'll share it at our next meeting, or I'll share it in August. It's bam, at Amber Neighbor, and she has it, and hey, I really like that article, here's one I found. And creating that collection, hashtag VHSELA, where we have an entire column on TweetDeck that is nothing but ideas for our classes and for each other's classes. So yeah, I think technology's been
As a first year teacher, our PLCs have really helped me not only collaborate with my team, but also have coaches in there, our principal in there, just about anyone we would need to be able to be successful in the classroom. So interventionists are there as well. So anytime I have any questions, or we need to look at data, create any assessments together, anything like that, that's our time to come together, and they really help make sure I'm on the right track. I then know a better understanding of what my students need, what standards need to be hit, just everything that needs to be successful for them. It's helped me immensely as a first
Collaboration process for us at Jardine Elementary School works really well because we can bridge gaps between grade levels, and we have an opportunity to create and work together in a situation that makes things happen for students that maybe they don't get an opportunity to do elsewhere. But on a grade level basis, it's really fun to get into the PLC meetings and talk about, like, I'm doing this in my classroom, it works really great. You're doing this in your classroom, it works really great. Hey, I have this. Can you send it to me? Can I send that to you? Like, can we try this? Can we switch these kids? It really provides an opportunity for us to know a whole grade level, but also to know an entire school. So I feel like it's a really positive and proactive way to go about teaching and education.
Our teachers have been working to learn from each other in our professional learning communities. We have PLCs that are functioning at both the building level and at the district level. Over the last couple days and on the rest of this week, we are working as district level PLCs. And so all teachers that at the secondary level that are teaching earth space science, say, are working together to talk about what should kids be learning and what evidence will we accept that students have actually mastered the content. What level of rigor do we expect in our classrooms?
We get together for 2 days in the summer. Our general ed teachers started and made tests based on our curriculum, and now we're the modified teachers that are trying to figure out how we can make modifications to make our students successful, and then we'll get a couple other opportunities throughout the school year to get together and talk it over.
If you want to get good professional learning, it's learning that day, it's be willing to learn something, have your assumptions challenged, implement it, reflect on it, be critiqued about it, adjust and try again. And then that makes your professional learning better.
When I notice things that are innovative, or I notice things that are getting the desired results, then I make sure to highlight that with the teachers, but I also ask them to bring those either to our PLC time, to our late start time, and to share with one another. And then through that, what I have noticed has started to happen is not only do they speak with one another more about it and start to view each other as experts, but then those also become my teacher leaders for professional development.
After watching and listening to these Kansas educators share their experiences about what learning communities look like, we are reminded that what we learn today doesn't make yesterday wrong. It makes tomorrow better. Again, Shirley Hoard gives us several great questions to ask ourselves as members of a learning community. What are we learning? Why are we learning it? How are we learning? And how are we sharing with others in our school? And we might add, how are we celebrating our success as we change our practice that impacts student learning? Let's look at our visual one more time. We know that as people learn in a community of practice, it includes reflection, and our learning is ongoing. As educators, we want to know how we are doing individually and collectively, what is working and what isn't, how it impacts student success, and what comes next as we seek to improve. Being a reflective educator and or team means that we are continually evaluating and updating who we are and what we are doing. This is accomplished by drawing on past experiences, by reflecting on our present work, and with the goal of driving future actions. As we all go down this journey of redesign, reflective practice is more important than ever to ensure it truly impacts student success. As we've noted throughout this video series, one size doesn't fit all. Within any learning community, there are many paths to achieve learning goals for both students and educators. The key to distinguishing between a culture of learning and a learning community is just the structure that provides the framework to achieve specific goals. With trust, a building that has a strong culture of learning can develop learning communities regardless of size. In the process, we deepen understanding, spark curiosity, and ignite our passion for learning. Learning Communities create an energized school that makes a difference for students. Educators work collaboratively, enliven not only their own classrooms, but all classrooms in their schools. Students, teachers, and administrators thrive in these environments. We all want to be in a vibrant and energized school. Joining together in the success of each student is a true joy. In conclusion, we've talked about why learning communities are important, what it takes, and what it looks like to make learning communities effective. Now it is time for you and your team to dream big, creating learning communities that inspire a culture of success for all. Learning Forward Kansas is here to support you in these efforts. Our mission is to build the capacity of educators to establish and sustain highly effective professional learning. When we are inspired to learn, our students win. Happy learning and leading.